I'm Brendan Shay with Resident Undead and the Mad Project, and today we are hanging out with Michelle, talking about her project, Inspiration 36, or the Inspiration House. Today I want to talk about a little bit the importance of history and preserving history and being able to have access to history. I think it's a very important thing, especially being young people nowadays. You know, when I was a kid, I didn't care, too much about history, and since I got into my late 30s, I've been privileged enough to do a lot of work at Madison Seminary in Madison, Ohio. And actually, I'm fresh out of the trenches right now. If you probably smell Madison on me, that's why. We spent all week, me and Adam Kimmel had a mancation. We spent all week doing the fire alarm system, doing new drywall, just getting to whatever we could get into at Madison.
Power tools.
Yeah. Man stuff, real man stuff. But it's become an important thing to me to preserve history because, you walk into a building like Madison or the Inspiration House and the energy of people who've come and gone over the years are just so, it's incredible. Like it's funny because I always talk about Waverly Hills. First time I ever walked into Waverly Hills Sanatorium, it was just weird that the amount of people who actually died there.
Yeah.
And to be walking those same halls that some of those people passed away, and it's just incredible. And it's just an important thing that we have to keep that history alive, even the sad history of it. It's still important to keep it alive. So maybe if you want to go into a little bit of the history of this house, how you came about finding it, and what made you guys want to purchase it.
Well, part of the interest in the properties here was just the history of the town itself. I mean, there's a book called "The Town That Started the Civil War," and Oberlin was one of the towns that was full of abolitionists, and at the time Republicans, because the parties swapped their ideologies. And in an area that was mostly Democrats. The Republicans were anti-slavery, the Democrats were the conservatives at that time. And they'd had a local who had been an escaped slave, and slave catchers finally caught up with him. And this is going to sound like it echoes things that are going on in the world right now, but the slave catchers came, they tried to abduct this citizen who had been living with everyone. They didn't care that he'd been an escaped slave. He had been living for years with everybody. And when the town found out, it went crazy, and a whole bunch of people, 25 of them, all went to break him out. They tried to attack the slave catchers to let them get this guy to let him go, and a bunch of them went to jail rather than countenance having someone who was free, who had fought for their freedom, get dragged away back to where he belonged at the time. So the town has all this Civil War connection, abolition connection. It was, the town was founded at the same time that the college, so in 1833, the whole vision was having this place of learning, this liberal bastion. Women were part of the college from the get-go, which 1833. So talking about history, we live in a time where so much is written on water. Things happen at the pace of the internet, and so one day's news cycle is old news 24 hours later, and we've almost forgotten about it. There's so many things I could bring up that are in the real world just within the past year of news stuff that people have kind of just, that's no longer relevant. When we lose touch with history, when we lose touch with the things that are our roots, with key events, whether they're good or bad, especially when they're unpleasant, we get blindsided by things when they come back up, because history continuously repeats itself. So part of preserving history is learning where we come from, what we've done, what people generally have done in the past to one another, learning a certain amount of compassion for that, being witnesses, with Waverly Hills, with Madison, where terrible things maybe happened, and understanding, the how and the why, not only so that you can tell those people's stories, but also so you can spread the word and help educate other people so that hopefully they don't do the same things again. We are a race that commits atrocities regularly. And hopefully, if we look back at the past often enough, we'll see that never ends well for anybody. So part of Inspiration House was because I love the town, And part of it was just the kismet, like the perfect connection of what I wanted in a property. A space where there were enough bedrooms where a bunch of people could sleep over if I wanted to do like a weekend workshop. A place where there was a hotel fairly close by that I had a good relationship with, and the hotel at Oberlin is wonderful. And also a town that people could get to fairly easily, but also had that feel of walking back into the past. Like that immersion into the past is kind of important. There's so many old homes here, and many of them are really well maintained. The town really has a good sense of its history, which made researching this place amazingly easy. And then the other criteria was, is it haunted? Because it's not just enough for me, like the history, the fact that there is a story that people lived their lives here, that people died in this house, that, in the 1800s, the ones that died in this house were shown in this house. You didn't have funeral parlors until, later on in. That there's just personal history, not just world history in this place. And some of the people, I believe, who lived in this house for quite some time are still here. And they're very eager to tell their stories. So I guess part of it is storytelling, bearing witness, and just finding the right space that has the right mix of events, connection to the history of the greater world, but also personal stories, personal history.
You said something about Oberlin being they keep really good track of their history.
Yeah.
I actually come from a town just south of Columbus called Lancaster, and they're the same way. They are so into preserving everything. Mm-hmm. And you can go, actually we were doing a shoot in the hometown of mine, and I went to the genealogy library, and just the incredible amount of information they have there. Like, there's some documents you have to put on latex gloves just to handle and touch. I mean, and it's incredible to be in a town that preserves their history, and they care that much. They don't want to destroy any building. Mm-hmm. They want to keep everything intact as much as they can, and to be able to save a property or save a building or save a house, to restore it to its natural beauty is just, it's an undertaking in itself, and it takes a whole group of people to do it. And have you found that here, where there's people who are just willing to step in and say, hey, Michelle, whatever you guys need to help get this place back going?
The day we took control of the property, we ran across an antique store, Alan Campbell's Antiques, and we picked a few things up because we wanted the furniture to fit the spirit of the house, fit the feel of the house. And first of all, I have to say, incredibly fair prices, wonderful, beautiful stuff. And then he was kind enough for some of the heavier things to deliver in his truck. Well, when he walked into the house, he had worked here as a young kid in the 70s and was just happy to tell me stories about the person who'd lived here at the time. And everybody who was with him was about stories of the place, of the house. When I mentioned to folks in town, what house I'd bought, they're like, oh, the brick one. The one across from this, everybody's got a story, and everybody's happy to share something about it, and point out where I can get this, where I can get that. So yeah, it's an incredibly supportive town, and it's just been a great experience.
Well, I know at Madison we have those people who've done the same thing. Like, we go to antique stores. We're trying to refurnish one of the wings, the Civil War side, to bring it to a time period esque what it would have looked like when people were living there. But the outpouring of people just donating stuff, it's just been incredible. And even the labor, the people showing up just to clean the building or get rid of trash or just volunteer for tours and that kind of stuff. It's an amazing, and this kind of thing takes an army. It takes a lot of people, because you can't do it by yourself.
Yeah, no, we were working 15 to 18-hour days for 2 months solid trying to get everything up to snuff, but it wasn't just us. We had, Uncle Tony came out and his wife, and I've got some friends down from Marion, Ohio, so Leslie and Shannon, and they brought this wonderful, hard-working woman, Bird. She's got a real name, but Bird. I know her as Bird. She's adorable. And I mean, they just, everybody put nose to grindstone, helped with the painting, helped with the cleaning. Kathy Santori was out there mowing the lawn while we were doing it because she didn't feel great about painting, and it just, everybody pulled together.
And that's, to have that is just phenomenal.
I would still be doing it. I mean, there's still a bunch of stuff to do here, and yeah, we still have people who are like, hey, when it comes time to do that extra thing, like, you know, I can do this, I've got this power tool, you know, I'm disabled, but, you know, I'll lend you the things that I've got, and I've got a lot of support online. I put up basically a registry for like a couple of extra things where it's like, you know, it'd be nice to replace the light fixture in this room, because what they've got is and, you know, people are happy to chip in for like a little thing here and there. I mean, every little bit counts, because it's an expensive endeavor. Like, this is nothing the size of Madison Seminary, and it's still a very expensive endeavor.
Oh yeah. I had heard you speak before, you know, a lot of stuff is energy that stays in a place. And just this week, you know, we're in there doing all this work, and just the amount of energy that we're putting forth ourselves, like trying, you know, it's a labor of love, as you would say. And I noticed that it's always a thing that they say when you do renovations or whatever to a place, you see an increase in activity. And as we're working there, you're hearing people running up and down the stairs at Madison, and it just seems that always that happens. Did you find that here when you started doing the renovations? Do you think that the spirits were upset with what was happening here, or were they happy? Because there's a spirit at Madison who, you know, we feel he's in the basement of the Civil War side. We feel that he is mad that we're doing this, that we're changing the environment.
Oftentimes they'll get really, really irritated if there are changes, because they get into ruts. They like things the way they've always been. They like things that are familiar to the way that they, and usually, like, if it's the guy who was there in the Civil War side, like if he fought in the Civil War, he's got a very old sense of what should be familiar. I was really lucky here. I think I'm still investigating and coming to conclusions, but I have got a sense that there are at least 3 distinct human spirits, intelligent hauntings, who are in the upper part of the house. And I'm going to make that distinction because there's a completely different story down in the basement. And they actually were pretty cool about everything. There was a sense of kind of like, what's going to happen? Because the people who owned it before us were really busy. They both had like high stress jobs and high stress lives, so they didn't take care of everything quite. I will say that, as far as I can tell from the spirits, the ghosts had opinions about the previous owners, and those opinions were not positive, regardless of how the previous owners actually kept the house up. When we started making the changes that we did, there was just this sense of like this buzzing, like conversation, almost like, you know, like your old auntie and your old, you know, great uncle all sitting in the background, just, you know, kind of like Statler and Waldorfing the whole thing. Like, I don't know, are they going to change those curtains? Are they going to do this? And then when they realized that I could hear them, the one guy, Ken, and I questioned it at first, but it panned out that he started giving me suggestions of what he wanted on the walls, like the colors of the walls and kind of like how things should be. And it turned out he's got like, he was very well versed in art history, probably an artist himself, has really good taste. And he'd lived here until Alan Campbell had been working for him in the 70s. So he'd worked here through, I think, 84 or so. He didn't die in the house. He ended up in a home, but I think he came back. So most of the people upstairs, resoundingly positive, a lot of support. They mostly just wanted everything from the previous owners just cleared out. They didn't like them. The basement is a different story. Now, I'm not entirely convinced that whatever is connected with the basement was a resident. I'm not sure, because it's been kind of weird. The first thing I noticed is, now usually I love basements. My bedroom's in a basement in my other house. So is mine. Yeah, it's one of the first places I go to. I like the dark, the cool. Like, I am not the person to shy from the dark. I'm the person who runs into it. I avoided this basement. I did not like it. And at first I was like, well, it's dirty, it's musty. Like, you know, we had to get like a dehumidifier and stuff. And then I was like, no, I'm just actively avoiding this basement. So of course, when I notice something like that, I'm like, so why? So immediately I go down there and I'm like, this place just feels creepy, like oppressively creepy. Something is not cool down here. All right, well, still cleaning the house and fixing everything, so I'll come back to that later. So I knew something wasn't okay down there, and it didn't seem happy. Actually, it seemed potentially pretty negative. Tony Santori came over and had his Pandoras, and he was doing sessions. He did one up in the parlor. It was hilarious because he got the male and female nattering in the background, which was great. Down in the basement, and I've got this up on my YouTube, he ended up with an EVP that was unlike anything I'd ever heard, because the microphone actually clipped. Like, the thing that was screaming at this microphone was so loud on his EVP
it just peaked everything.
Clipped. You could hear it clip, not just once, but 3 times in a row. And it was just screaming. I mean, like, he played it back and you watched every hair on Tony's arm raise. And I was just like, well, that's special. Not sure I want to think about that right now, but, and I mean, I've never heard anything like it.
Do you have any idea who it is, what it is?
I've got a couple of working theories. One, if it's a person who was a resident of the house, there's one possibility that is not dark and spooky, and that is Arden Dale, who was a former mayor of Oberlin. He died while he was in office, at I think the age of 59. He died of cancer. And it was a cancer that he knew he had, and he had enough time with it to prepare to pass his office to people. And what I know from cancer, I had a next door neighbor in the 70s who died of cancer, and I lived in the country, and you heard him screaming in his house the whole summer. Like, it was just gut-wrenching, horrible sounds. And one possibility is it's Arden, and it's more an echo, less an intelligent thing, and just that suffering kind of locked in the house. The part of the basement is like the oldest part of the house, and I have noticed like stone basement, old masonry seems to lock some of the oldest stuff in. Like I don't know how it traps it or why. I've got ideas again, but that's neither here nor there. My other idea is it's not attached to the house at all, but possibly the land around it or something else around it. This house was built in 1869, finished in 1870, so it's post Underground Railroad, it's post Civil War, but this whole area was very, very big on the Underground Railroad. It's why slave catchers were coming to drag people back to Kentucky and, south of the Mason-Dixon line. So that, it's harder to research things that are tied to the land that aren't tied to the house. And mostly I just want to do a little bit more investigation and also have other people do it. Like I want second, third, fourth, and fifth opinions. I want to be able to compare other people's impressions, both traditional, like physical investigation as well as metaphysical, psychic investigation, so we can kind of put our heads together and see what is. Don't know. Screamed at the microphone though. I mean, like, whoa, did it scream?
Well, if you were freaked out, that's saying something, huh?
It was pretty close to like, well, I hope it doesn't make the house hard to live in.
Well, this is a beautiful place. You guys have done an excellent job. I'm so happy that I got a chance to come here, speak with you today. If people want to book Inspiration House, where can they go? Right
now it's up on Airbnb as Inspiration House. The address is 36 South Street, which is why the website is Inspiration 36. You can get to the Airbnb from that, and you can get to that from my website too. Those would be just book a room, book the house, whatever, but you'd be on your own for the investigation. On the weekends that I'm not here or on the weeks that I'm not here doing stuff, people can come in and do whatever they want.
And if people want to contact you personally or they want to get some of your books or your music, where can they go?
MichelleBelanger.com, and the last name is spelled Belanger or Belanger, depending on where in the country you're from. So that's my main website. If you Google whack Michelle and Vampire, you'll probably find me for like the first 20 pages. So, and I'm also on Facebook. I've got a Facebook fan page, Twitter, YouTube, and all of those are under Seth Anakim. And I know that's a mouthful too. It's an old internet handle that I just never gave up. It's S-E-T-H, like Seth Anakim, A-N-I-K-E-E-M. And if you're fans of my Shadowside fiction series, that last word will make sense. It's an old tribe of angels.